Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Siegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Binner and Ash Paulson to discuss everything we know about Twilight Princess HD from the latest Nintendo Direct. So, let's get started. Alright guys, so we already talked about the entire Nintendo Direct, but we want to dive into more detail into some specific announcements, and of course, one of the big ones is the fact that they finally confirmed Twilight Princess HD is in fact a real thing, which I don't think anyone really questioned or doubted, but it's now a real thing. We saw it in action. And yeah, let's dive into our impressions and maybe our final hopes for this game, as we finally have some better idea of what to expect from it. So let me go and start off here, and I'll be honest, I'll be straight up. Like when I was watching Nintendo Direct, when they were showing the footage of the game, I kept waiting for them to cut to the HD version. I'm like, oh yeah, here's a Wii one, and then now we're gonna see the huge improvement, and that never came. What I was looking at was the HD version, which at the time was disappointing, and to some degree still is. However, then I actually did a head-to-head analysis, or a head-to-head comparison of the game, and they are basically redoing almost every texture in this game, from what I can tell. Adding a ridiculous, or not, I shouldn't say ridiculous, but adding a ton more detail than was there before. Like, for instance, in how you can actually see the fabric of Zelda's dress, or the chair she's sitting on. And that applies to almost every texture that I could see from the footage. And so in that respect, this is actually impressive. Like, they are actually redoing a lot about this game. But I feel like, I guess for me, it's not going quite far enough, or as far as I had hoped. So while the texture detail by itself is awesome, I was hoping they would go beyond just textures and upgrade like the lighting, like they did with Wind Waker HD, or maybe some of the models. So I don't know, like it's weird. I'm in this weird gray area where it's not anywhere close to what I was hoping for, but at the same time it's more impressive than I'd seen at first glance.
We're all kind of in that situation. Like everybody I've seen talk about this game is always like, well, it doesn't look that much more impressive. I was waiting for like, okay, here's the Wii U version, and seeing that big jump, and it never came because it's that was the version we were looking at. But each time you look at the greater detail, it is that much more impressive. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to blow anybody's minds, but it is a nice cleanup to everything involved, and that extends to the just interface, because oh my god, the interface is so much better than what it was on the Wii version. I had to play that in order to get that comparison footage for you for the actual gameplay, and I was trying to get rid of the map that was trying to get on there. So I was like, okay, push 2 to get rid of map. I pushed the 2. All right, there's no map. Instead, press 2 to bring back map. What?
Yeah.
I forgot all about that. And it's just, it was just so insane to me. And it's nice to see, like, there's nothing here that's going to blow your mind visually or anything like that. But it is an improvement. And I think it's something that's slowly going to build up over time and see like, okay, yeah, this does work better, or this is better, and that's my hope. It's not going to be anything major, but it'll sneak up on you and say, okay, yeah, this is an improvement.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a case where the improvements don't really make themselves apparent until you see the two side by side. Because I fully admit that when I first saw the trailer during the Nintendo Direct, I knew I was looking at the HD version, and I wasn't all that impressed, but it did, the full scope of the texture improvements did not, become apparent to me until I saw the head-to-head. And in that sense, yeah, I mean, there's no question the textures are being dramatically improved, and things really are looking better across the board. That said, the baseline from which they're operating really isn't very high. I mean, Twilight Princess is not an attractive game by any means, so when you're operating from such a low baseline, there's only so high you can go. So I never expected Twilight Princess HD to look anywhere close to as good as Wind Waker HD, and that seems to be exactly the case. But it's less the textures that I think are the problem, because, as I said, the textures are looking a lot better than it is the geometry. I mean, when you look at the title screen for Twilight Princess HD, or at least the footage from the Twilight screen from the title screen, you can see that the Hyrule Field is like this flat, featureless kind of just big piece of geometry, and I think it's the geometry that really identifies this as a previous generation game more than anything, because like I said, the textures are looking good, but like that close up on the model of Wolf Link looked pretty rough. I mean, you can definitely, it really is, to me, it's a matter of the polygons and the geometry that really identify this as a previous generation game. But at least the textures are being improved, because that really was the main problem with the original version of Twilight Princess. Visually.
Right.
Visually, I should say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you there. Like, the geometry is the most glaring thing now, especially with the game looking so sharp now. It almost makes the rough or the lower quality models stand out even more now. Like, when I saw Wolf Link, I was really hoping they'd give him like a soft fur effect. That could have gone a long ways in making just a small enhancement that would make him look a lot better. But as is, yeah, he definitely stands out as being definitely an artifact or a result of the time he was created in.
Yeah. Well, that's what's interesting is that Wind Waker HD, by comparison, looks like it was far more of an overall, like an overhaul, I should say. Whereas Twilight Princess HD does seem to be almost like a straight-up HD remaster with fewer visual overhauls, whereas Wind Waker really was, it almost looks like a different game if you compare the two side by side.
It does. I mean, in those first screenshots, even then, and although it was a little bit divisive at the time, you could tell that the graphics were different, and that was because of the new lighting engine they were using. And I thought Twilight Princess HD could benefit something from that as well, and evidently, at least going off from what we've seen, there doesn't seem to be anything like that of the sort in this game. Which is disappointing, because we talked about before about the possibility of them like brightening up the color palette or changing the color palette based on the HD character model of Link that came out. And as far as I can tell, they're not changing the colors at all, which is awesome if you're a huge fan of Twilight Princess and just want the same game to look better. That's great. But for me, like I did think the original colors were a little bit drab at points. And actually, Ash, I think I have to go back to something I said earlier, but I forget what exactly we had said. But you said you wanted them to brighten up the game like significantly, and I think I kind of opposed that at the time. But looking back upon Twilight Princess again, I think I might be with you. I think I'm like, this game really is kind of drab looking and almost depressing, really.
Well, and that said, I have to say the footage of Hyrule Field did look like they kind of kicked up the color palette a notch. Like, it's not any dramatic difference, but it does seem a little brighter than I remember. But I could be wrong. That could be a placebo.
It might be. I mean, I think part of the reason that this game is not wowing everybody as much as they were hoping is there was an expectation after seeing that CG model of Twilight Princess Link, and it looked so clean and so good and so sharp. And that's not what we're getting, It's not that huge of an improvement that we saw with that model, and I think that expectation versus reality probably hurt the game a little bit. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes sometimes. And I'm still more than willing to give this game the benefit of the doubt. The thing I'm a little unsure about is that they didn't really give us a lot of details about what's being changed.
They didn't give any details except for like the amiibo support, really.
Did Nintendo announce what they were changing when they first announced Wind Waker HD? I can't remember
not
off the top of my head.
Not when
really.
they first announced it, no.
Okay, so we can definitely expect where improvements are coming in with the next trailer.
Yeah, I mean, Reggie himself said there'd be more to announce later on, and that I'm excited to see what they have coming. And I still have to think like that fixing that intro has to be the number one priority on their list. It has to be. And I feel like given the fact that they readily identified Wind Waker's main problem being the sailing, I feel like they'll identify the slow intro as being a main problem here as well. So I
sure hope so.
Yeah, so I have faith that that's one of the things they're fixing. Although I am starting to think that they won't go nearly as far with improving the game as some of the ideas we threw out in our earlier discussions, especially based on what we've seen with the visuals now. I think we're going to see more, just a lot of smaller nips and tucks here and there.
Yeah,
this does seem to be more of a straight up, remastering than Wind Waker was, which was kind of like halfway between a remake and a remaster.
Right.
This seems to be much closer to just a remaster, and I hate to say it, and this might be the elephant in the room, but I'm getting the sense that this might be the case because, as sad as it is, the Wii U is on its way out. This could be its last full year. Coming up, 2016 could be its last full year with the NX coming up and everything. And, I'm not going to go so far as to say that I'm getting a Mario Tennis Ultra Smash vibe, because I'm not. I'm not. But at the same time, though, look at the disparity between the amount that they're remaking in Twilight Princess HD versus what they did with Wind Waker HD. You know what I mean? It does seem like there's I'm getting a slightly rushed vibe from this. Like, we just need to have something put out for the first quarter of 2016 that people are going to be excited for. But look at the actual amount of effort that's being put into remaking the visuals. It's not bad, but it's not as impressive and as big an overhaul as Wind Waker was either. So I'm trying to choose my words carefully, because I don't want to set people off.
Well,
but at the same time, I do kind of feel like that this is kind of just being pushed out to have something for the Wii U in the first quarter of 2016.
I mean, I totally, I kind of, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I basically agree with it. At the same time, I mean, again, like, it's clear they're not completely rushing this, but the texture detail is great.
Exactly.
But I guess I kind of wish they had taken maybe some of the effort and used it to enhance the visuals elsewhere as well, outside of just textures. Because although it will look, I mean, the game looks super sharp. That is awesome. But I think they might need to go beyond that. Because at this point, as I mentioned before, like, the game basically looks as I remembered Twilight Princess looking. I didn't mean that as an insult necessarily. I meant that as a compliment in a way, because the way we remember games tends to be better than how they actually looked. So the fact that made this game look as I remembered is great. The problem is it's really not that impressive just looking at the game itself. Because as I mentioned, I think as you guys talked about too, it wasn't until it really did the head-to-head that the enhancements started to come out. But the fact that it took the head-to-head almost kind of mitigates the enhancements in a way, right?
Right, because like the very first screenshots we saw of Wind Waker HD, the improvement was immediately apparent.
It was, yeah. You could immediately see there was a huge change to the lighting. And I still think, I mean, and to be fair, the game doesn't come out for basically 6 months. And I really am hoping they're going to use that time to further enhance the visuals. But I really do think just adding some new lighting effects would go so far to enhancing the overall look of this game, the overall presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe they still will. Maybe that's still forthcoming. And, to be fair, like you said, it is 6 months out, and it's an early trailer. I don't want to be that person who's like, okay, well, this game doesn't look as good as it should, and that's just case closed, like Nintendo failed. I'm not saying that. The game is still early. I'm just saying that it's apparent that there's less effort being put into remastering the visuals here than there was in Wind Waker HD. Mm-hmm. But it could still look so much better by the time this game actually comes out that it might not matter.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally it. So, I guess, I mean, I went into this hoping it would be more of a remake than it is a remaster, even though I wasn't expecting a remake.
Well, I think we all did, given that CG model. I think we all did. We were like, wow, maybe they're really remaking this from the ground up visually. Like, this is going to be a huge improvement. So I think we were all slightly deflated when we saw that it actually isn't.
Right. I will say, I am happy to see, as we mentioned before, that they are using the GameCube version as a base.
Yes.
We're getting the true original, the version of the world that the developers originally intended is what we're getting here, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. And I think that'll be fun too, just coming at it from having, because I did the guide for IGN for Twilight Princess. I did the guide, like 10 years ago almost now. And so I played that game a ton back then, and it'll be fun coming out from a fresh perspective. Like, not, from having a similar but unfamiliar world at the same time, or slightly unfamiliar world. So I really am looking forward to playing it, both with a conventional controller, somewhat, and in the original version, and the original version of the world.
No, totally. I mean, I reviewed Twilight Princess for the site I was writing for back then. It's not around anymore, but, I reviewed it pretty in-depth. I mean, that was like a big deal review for me. So for me, this is kind of coming full circle, like, a decade later, how does this game hold up personally for me as someone who reviewed it, pretty intensely. I'm really looking forward to revisiting it and seeing kind of how it holds up and how I feel about it versus how I felt about it, however many years ago it was. Mm-hmm. A decade.
I only played the Wii version, and I actually went out and hunted down the GameCube version about a year ago, just so I could have the true version. Like, okay, if I ever decide to go back and play Twilight Princess, at least I'll have the way it's meant to be played, because honestly, the only addition that the Wii version had that I really enjoyed was the aiming mechanics, and as we've stated before, the Wii U version can totally handle that, where they can keep it to Link being left-handed and having the world not be mirrored, and still keep those excellent aiming controls to just give you that much more accuracy. It really feels like this is going to be the definitive version, no matter what you may say about the visuals or anything else. but it will be the best version of Twilight Princess.
I don't think there's any question of that, at least for
No
me.
doubt.
I mean, I am sure it will be the definitive version. So, I actually, I mean, at the very least, even if they don't enhance the gameplay as much as I think they should or need to, I am looking forward to playing the game with the Wind Waker HD elements that they also brought into that game, which I'm sure will be the case here, with like aiming with the gamepad or being able to swap out your inventory in real time on the gamepad.
Yeah.
Without pausing the game. Like I think those will all be great enhancements. Especially if you can do it on the move too, like while riding opponent, for instance.
Totally.
Yeah. All right, I think that wraps up for us here. So thanks, guys, for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to them in the description below, which is a good way to keep up to date on everything we post. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain for more on Twilight Princess HD and other things gaming as well. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.